start from the basics. Hyper-automation. What is it that causes an organisation to really need or demand hyper-automation? Who'd like to kick us off?
Sure, I can take that question.
Thanks, Erin.
So, we work a lot with mid-market companies, Andrew. So, when I say mid-market, it's between 500 million to about $3 billion in the US scheme of things. And when you look at hyper-automation, it's a culmination of multiple kinds of products that come together to automate organization-wide processes, right? It could be starting with BPM, workflow automation, all the way up to AI/ML. Now, how do organizations pick these? I think we start with picking the low-hanging fruits with respect to what can be easily automated, and then go all the way up to optimizing it through AI and ML. So, when you look at hyper-automation, the need really starts with trying to, especially in industries such as manufacturing, oil and gas, where we play a large role, starting with processes that are easily identifiable and then taking them through the entire scheme of things, organization-wide, enterprise-wide automation, using different kinds of tools and techniques that come together to deliver automation together. I think that's the way we look at hyper-automation, and that delivers enterprise-wide value.
Okay, so prioritization is important.
Absolutely.
Okay. And folks, any other different views?
I guess the reason is why, right? I think it stems from the rising expectations of the consumer market. For example, we want everything in a snap of a finger. We want, and I was sharing this in my previous session, it's me.inc. It has to be personalized, right? And if I'm unhappy with an experience, my choices are many, and I leave. So in order for us to cater to this type of rising expectations, if organizations do not automate and do not hyper-automate, I think they'll be left behind. As simple as that.
Brilliant, thank you. Yuri?
Yeah, I think that translates to the demand for just-in-time decisions, just-in-time actions, and the IT departments do not keep up with the requirements that come from the business that are attributed to these types of actions or decisions. And this is where the hyper-automation comes in as a universal solution for things that are repeatable, low touch, and with less of the potential human mistakes to make those decisions delivered just in time.
I mean, I'd just like to add that I feel that quite a lot of the time businesses that start looking at automation don't know what they need to do. They know they've got an issue, they know they've got a lot of waste somewhere in the process that's taking a lot of time to do certain things, like you say, that are repeatable, but they don't really know what they're looking for. So they'll go out there and start to investigate on the internet, etc., talking through various businesses. So quite often it's a pre-product kind of process where they're really just trying to understand what that problem is and how they can improve that. And obviously, as they start to look, they can start to build on all of this kind of technology that we've been discussing today.
Interesting. So they need to identify the need for hyper-automation as opposed to just realise that there's something wrong and try and find some way of fixing it. There needs to be a proper identification.
Yeah, I would agree. It's great for us as partners, etc., to be able to go out there and say, this is all the stuff you want, no code, low code, etc. But for customers, they don't kind of understand that it's not their business. They know their business, they know that there's ways in which they can improve, etc. And it's really just helping them understand and working with them to try and identify areas of their business and products that can help them sort of improve and streamline. Because for me, the best CRM systems out there are the ones that require the least amount of user input. The less time we can have users sat in front of their CRM system doing stuff with it, the better that CRM system is for the business. If people are sat there 8 hours a day typing stuff in, that's wasting a load of time. The people that are using it should be out there doing their job, not entering the data. So by using the various different tools out there, with the hyper automation stack of products that will really start to bring big benefits on revenue, work in progress time, etc.
Yeah, very astute, Daniel. Thank you very much. Thanks to you all. Some great insights there. And look, hyper-automation, it's a term. It's understood in different ways by different people, okay? But there's a lot of technologies there that are bannered within hyper-automation. Low-code, no-code, workflow automation, RPA, AI, what have I missed? SaaS packaged offerings. What do you believe are the most promising of these technologies? And obviously then why?
I can start this way.
Sure.
You've got the microphone.
Well, there's a few.
Yeah.
For me, the most interesting one's actually RPA. I know that it's a good place to start, because when you look at businesses out there, they've invested a lot of money in their incumbent systems. A lot of times these systems we're replacing with CRM products, etc. are older desktop products. And obviously with RPA or robotic process automation, it's for me looking at, I don't know if anyone's ever had experience of software testing applications where you program how you click around on the screen, and then it repeats that process to test the software works. So actually, the RPA side of things is almost exactly the same, but it allows the software to set the inputs rather than it being pre-programmed. So for example, having someone sit there and type in an invoice into a desktop application can be automated just by providing the company name from some other system. So for me, that allows people that have spent a lot of money on their incumbent applications that can then link to Creatio to sort of automate as much of that process while still retaining that investment. And it's one of the hardest things that I see over the years for people to deal with, is actually almost chucking away their hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of investment in a product. And so RPA for me is one of those bits that allows them to continue using for a while that product and start to bring in new technology.
To me, processes that crunch the information, they deliver the data and endpoints for low-code, no-code experiences that the business can craft for their needs. And this is where it will be happening in the future. The more adoption will be happening in the areas where the technology like RPA or artificial intelligence improves the product and the service offering, while the crunching the data will be more and more automated. So I think on the map of use of different technologies, this is where it's going to land.
Right. Sorry. Go ahead. So I think when it comes to AI ML, I think it's been something that's been in the R&D side of things for way too long now. Right? It still comes out as an innovation even today, having been there for 10 years, 15 years. But I think when you look at hyper-automation, the easiest places to start is where you can get quick wins, right? First you understand what needs to be automated, and then automate where you can get quick wins. And I think low-code, no-code is a place where you can start. And you can get things done in 30, 60, 90 days, right? And once you get things done, I think the optimization, measuring and optimization is when the AI ML piece comes into the picture. So I think a great place to start would be with low-code, no-code, where you can have quick wins, leverage tools like Creatio, for example, where you can automate things in double quick time. And then, of course, you bring in other things, like AML to optimize and build on that. RPA is a great example, but I think RPA, again, is post a certain level of optimization, because RPA heavily relies on the quality of data and the quality of input. And that is post a certain level of automation, at least in my perspective. So I think the first level of automation, low code, no code, the best way to go. Then you use RPA to automate some of the repeatable processes, and then you leverage AI ML to build on these repeatable processes and use machine learning to get that out the door, reducing human intervention.
Yeah, that's a great playbook that we often see is being followed by the organizations.
So I have slightly complementary but different perspective. We live in a very interesting age, right? We are transforming, we are talking about first principle thinking, where it's not about just making evolutionary changes. We have the opportunity to make step changes, really jump forward and in competition. So in a situation like that, I think RPA is great and it's a great place to start, but it's automation of the past, in my view, because it's the same way of doing things that you've been doing for a long time. But it is a great place to start if it's easier for companies to adopt that. So then you're thinking, how do I automate for the future? And then you have a grand scheme of choices that you talked about, Andrew. Low-code platforms, AI, ML, SaaS platforms, and you name it. So then we put on top of that a few challenges that we have in terms of skills and not finding a lot of that. And we're competing and competing for resources and competing for minutes and hours. And when you weigh all of that, I guess low-code platforms comes on top in trying to achieve the two main things. One is, how do I automate so that I can actually leapfrog, automate things thinking of the future, and do it as quickly as possible, and do it with the skills available to me. So it becomes, your quick win from that perspective.
And the more I'm thinking about that and kind of visualize and conceptualize the approach that different organizations can take, I see that low-code, no-code can be some technical solutions, short-term MVP, get rolling, and then the RPA and the hyper-automation can be thought of like taking that to a scale and break the walls between siloed applications between the departments and make it cross-boundary with using of the RPA and automation on steroids. And this is probably a definition of hyper-automation. No siloed, but strategically aligned across multiple business departments.
Yeah, and from my personal experience on this point, using a platform to actually cut through silos to pull together legacy environments so that an operator doesn't need to jump in to various applications, screens, and even between departments. So the actual automated process will take them through and navigate their way through without them needing to go into several systems. So this is very much at the heart of an example of hyper-automation.
Just looking back to the previous speakers, remember they were pulling data like once a day. Then after applying the low-code, no-code and the seamless integration, it's 3 times a day, so the data becomes more near to real time, and it also facilitates the decision-making process.
I think, to Daniel's point, you're talking of CRM and keying in data for 8 hours. I'd like to share an experience where this was the world's largest cement company, and to get a sales guy to key in CRM data is one of the most difficult things, right? He's got 9-10 hours on the field, and after a long day get to the hotel room and say, type out all the things that you captured on the field is the most difficult thing, right? So how do you bring in automation there? If you can give him a tool that he can use on the field that helps him capture information real time, gives him real time information. We were talking of 360-degree view of the customer. When he goes meets dealers or distributors, give him access to information that will help him make the sale better, or help him capture information better. I think that's a fundamental use case of making a user's life easier. And that's the fundamental, I think, need of automation there, either to reduce human intervention or make human lives easier. I think that's the fundamental case for automation, in my opinion. And I think, great point there with respect to saying, spending time keying in data and looking for data is the most difficult problem today, especially in the CRM world.
Okay. So, Harith, great example there. So let's just step back for a moment and think, right, packaged applications have been around for a long time. Okay. packaged applications versus no-code platform. What's the difference? What's the advantage?
Huge advantage can be found in low-code, no-code. It can be super customized with the very minimum cost and effort and time spent on that. Where the packaged software implementation can take months and years to build the proper configuration just because how rigid the off-the-shelf software may be. So those are the key differentiators.
Yeah, I think, I mean, having implemented probably well over 150 CRM implementations over the years, I don't think I've ever done one that is purely an out-of-the-box system. Even if it's just changing some fields or drop-downs, there's always some benefit to people to make some change. Now, the question is that change a configuration change, or is it a customization change? And obviously the configuration stuff, apart from the drop-downs, etc., you're expecting most products to do that kind of thing. But it's the ability to tailor a process, the ability to, for me, for the no-code, low-code scenario and the product itself, allows you to take a process that would normally be coded, otherwise it would be no code, there has to be some code in the background, and taking that process and standardising it, and allowing people to effectively, in reality, write their own code by dragging blocks of code that happen to be a no-code object into a certain workflow process and putting rules around it. And that ability to take, as we've been hearing all day, to take what used to be thousands of lines of code with developers constantly typing and allow them to customize very quickly and easily their system to match their requirements is the real benefits around the no-code platform and standard. And I don't know if anyone else has ever implemented a CRM system and never touched anything within it. I think it's sort of been quite rare. But yeah, that's pretty much what needs to be changed for them.
Thanks, Daniel. Any other views?
Yeah, I guess just to add to what Daniel was saying, and I agree with you, there's never been a package software that came out and said, oh, it's perfect, super fit. In the previous session that I was running, I think it was a banking customer, and we asked the question of how many platforms do they use to serve a customer? And the answer was 7. Imagine yourself sort of going into 7 applications or platforms to be able to serve just one customer. You're going to probably be waiting, you're going to be switching screens, you're going to be doing a whole bunch of things. I think with a no-code platform, it is a platform, so you can build multiple applications. It's a single view that brings it all together, and it is highly customizable, right? So, it can be made to fit your organization. So I think those 3 things are, key in sort of picking a no-code platform versus customized. But also to add to that, I guess, even with packaged software, there's always skills required to customize it, implement it, integrate it. I think that the critical thing here is your own organization can potentially maintain a no-code platform very easily, make small customizations. So that just makes it easy to adopt, and adoption, as you know, is critical, isn't it? And we've seen so many organizations just acquire license after license after license and then say, what do I do with it? Because there's so many licenses that go to waste, that's all investment, that's down the drain. So I think for those reasons, having a single platform works.
So I agree with you. In fact, I would dare say in most situations, packaged applications go deep into a specific use case or a set of use cases, while low-code, no-code applications give you the ability to go wider. They give you breadth of addressing multiple use cases, leveraging a platform that's already there, which is Chinthhi's point. But in packaged applications, for going by her example, again, if you have to go just by packaged applications, you have 6 or 7 packaged applications sitting and you'll have to get all of them to talk to each other. But you could have a common platform, which is low-code, no-code, to address use cases across many of these scenarios. So I think depth versus breadth is the fundamental difference between packaged versus a platform that's either low-code or no-code.
Okay. You're going to...
Yeah, just a comment on the packaged software application. typically it comes with a lot of subject matter expertise loaded into the packaged application. It can be generations of evolution of certain processes and capabilities and features. Then the company who wants to automate or who wants to enable their business model may not need all of that. So it may take quite of time to carve out the pieces that are really needed for this business model. So there should be always a very weighted approach which direction to go.
Okay, thank you. So, look, we've identified in some circumstances the need to hyper-automate. Okay, we've talked about some of the technologies. What would be the workflows or the business functions that really are adapted for, or can be adapted for taking advantage using automated processes? So what are the workflows and the business functions that really are good identifiable ones to automate?
Well, that's a loaded question. My mind is spinning about different verticals and their use case scenarios. My background is banking and financial services, and anything that relates to processing customer payments or related to the product, servicing the product through the life cycle of that product, those are the elements that are typically automated, so that process becomes low touch from the human perspective. And then you take that as an example and see where the areas of low touch workflows can be in any other verticals. And that can be in supply chain, can be in post-sales experiences, and the list goes on.
Yeah, it's a broad question. I mean, traditionally, obviously, the sales process is the one that people identify CRM for. But one of our customers, for example, they pick, pack, and dispatch prescriptions. So they deal with something like 15,000 deliveries a day. Each one of those deliveries might have up to 20 products on it. And when we got involved with them, they were turning over around $14 million, had 150 staff. We've been working with them for a number of years now, and they're now turning over $460 million, and they've got 80 staff. So the processes that they adopted were very much around call centre management, contacting patients to arrange deliveries that over time got brought into automated processes with web portals, etc., that allowed customers to self-service a lot of the information, book their delivery slots. So really just the customer interaction side is very key. A lot of the time people think about CRM systems. We look at some of the older ones, it was very much contact-centric, and then everything went account-centric. I think now things are moving back into a contact sort of person persona. So we're now looking at ways in which we talk and interact with people. From the personalisation perspective, we looked at with the ladies' shop, etc. And just looking at the processes that would normally require some kind of interaction with regards to things like ordering and booking and that kind of stuff. But obviously, typical sales, etc. as well, we always see it now.
Sure. I guess if you're really looking at a platform like Creatio, we shouldn't just think of it as just CRM. I feel that you miss a lot of the opportunity in leveraging a platform like Creatio when you just think of one implementation of it. I guess it's about prioritization, and prioritization based on some of the challenges that particular customer would have. So prioritization would be, automate things that enable you to attract, engage, and manage your customer interactions well. That would be potentially the first point, first area that you could, irrespective of business, irrespective of industry, right? Second, from an operational perspective, there are two things, and again, I guess each client will decide what their priority is. But the second would be potentially areas where you can optimize cost. Go ahead and automate that. We were talking about in another session about zero-touch claims, right? If you look at the cost of a claims process, and if there are claims that outweigh that cost, then go ahead and make it zero-touch, and that just drops your cost down. So that way you have ability to invest in more of the customer touch point automations. And a third would be anything to do with compliance and regulations. Every single client, especially banking, financial services. I think when we asked in the previous session, a lot of them said 50% of their time they spent just managing compliance and regulation requirements. So if we can build that in, like we've done with several of our implementation, where you build the compliance requirements into your workflow, that it's automated and it's just done, that's a great way to save time, money, and you get to spend more time with your customers and engaging them and attracting them.
Sure, I think I'll try to answer that question. As broad as the question is, I'll give a broad answer to it. I think 3 areas where I think we can pick easiest or fastest way to automation is where you can increase revenue, reduce cost, and manage risk. And I think you spoke about regulatory compliance, right? Reduce the amount of human intervention in any process, and that has a positive impact on your business. Right? Anything that helps you increase revenue, reduce costs. I think these broad 3 areas that you can look at. Go deep into processes that have multiple workflows into each of these areas. I think that's the first step you can do to automate something that will have a tangible business impact in a foreseeable, finite period. So I think these are the 3 areas I touch.
Fantastic.
And sorry, just very quickly, that's a good point, because lean manufacturing was obviously a big thing and everyone reduced their work in progress time, but lean IT nowadays is quite a key thing actually. It's coming back to work in progress, how quickly or how can we shorten our sales cycles, how can we shorten the time it takes to process a claim, how can we shorten any of these processes, and what is it we need to do to actually do that? Is it going to be automated, is it repeatable, or does it need interaction? Really just finding the only points that need interaction, trying to automate everything else.
Fantastic. Look, some fantastic answers there, and actually quite a difficult question to answer, because there is so much you can do around automation, around workflow, around optimization. Anything computational can get more efficient, and that is at the root of what we're talking about here in terms of hyper-automation. So I think that's a very telling point. Some very insightful answers, thank you. I'm very conscious of time. I'm very conscious of something called cocktail time. But I just wondered, is there any questions from the floor before we start to move on? Yeah, hi.
So I know it's almost cocktail hour, but I have an ethical question for you. I'm hearing that hyperautomation is going to rely on machine learning and artificial intelligence, and we even know from the last 10 years that those algorithms can have our own biases built into them. How can we mitigate those biases and try to prevent perpetuating inequalities as we're looking toward a future with hyperautomation?
Fantastic question. Who would like to take this one?
Ethics Commission.
Yeah, so, do you want to go first? That's a great question. I think there's serious concern with hyperautomation of how do you make sure that there's still participation and really jobs for that matter. But I think it also creates an opportunity for us to do higher value things as individuals, and I think that's what we need to look at. And hopefully, each of these, with the prototyping and rapid review of what we are building, rapid review of the automation, you're able to ensure that those biases don't get built into it, because you're controlling what gets built into the automation, and you can choose which way you want to go. AI, I know machine learning and AI can get a little nerve-wracking and scary, but at the end of the day, we're the ones who build it and we're the ones who code it, and that way can be controlled.
Brilliant, thank you. And just from my observations in life and experience, where AI and ML has come from is from technical specialists, and technical specialists are from a smaller circle of society and life. Okay, and what no code and every sort of technology that we're talking about here is about empowerment. It's about democratization, and therefore a much wider social spectrum is attainable by providing these technologies to a much wider circle of influence and design. So I think the first step, and it's not the ultimate step, but the first step is getting away from a restricted access of society to a much wider generation. And I think it's a question of always challenging the technology as we move forward. So from my point of view, it's about that democratization.
And I'd like to add to what Andrew said. I think to your point, AI and ML are essentially rules, things that build on top of rules that humans build ourselves, right? So you lay the platform with a set of rules, that an engine that you build, and AI ML builds on top of that engine depending on behavior of how that engine is used during a certain time period, right? So I think it builds a case for bringing in better regulatory compliance, better inclusivity when you try to automate things and build that engine, and AI ML just builds on top of it. So I think it helps you in a way to solve that problem. When it's when humans come in is when biases take place. But when you have an engine, an automated engine coming in, you can bring in strict rules that take away those biases and build on top of a clean slate, if I may call it that way. So I think it's better in a way, especially to the point that you're addressing.
It's a philosophical question where the responsibility will be coming from. But I agree with your point. If we do the democratization of that and not restrict the access, let's our kids to create something based on AI, and let's the legislators deal with this.
How does this sound to you?
We're getting there.
Okay. It's a stepping stone. It's a learning. Okay. Right. Well, I would like to say thank you very much for everyone's attention.